What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench Podcast Network and channel. Giving a shout out to the rest of the crew. I'm talking about Shy, Kelvin, Jermaine, KB Film Room, Big Dog Talk Sports. That's right, that's right. And for everyone who's tuning in, we hope that you support Behind the Bench, continue supporting Behind the Bench, become a subscriber, and help make this show the best that it can be. Now, I want to talk about the NBA as we are approaching the home stretch with about 20 games left to go in the regular season. Teams are starting to vouch for playoff positioning, and in particular in the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference is shaping up too, but particularly the Western Conference, because you have more of those young teams that are ascending simultaneously, more so in the West than in the East. But when I look at Eastern Conference teams like the Orlando Magic, 10 games over 500, the Indiana Pacers, overall playing good basketball, teams like that, the New York Knicks, they have a great mixture of veteran players, prime players, and young talent. And they was rolling high until the injuries started to mount with Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. And then they've been missing Mitchell Robinson, their starting center, for the majority of the season. But nonetheless, the Knicks improved indeed. But in the West, when I look at the standings, let's just take a look at it. I see a clash that's about to take place. And I believe eventually the pendulum will shift over to those organizations who built up their young talent, who carried out a vision. And normally when you start over as a team and you start drafting young talent, bringing young talent in, it's going to take about 4 years. It's going to take about 4 years, which really is not that long. Because by year 3, you should start seeing the level of improvement that you want. And then by year 4, that's when things start to click. So this is what I envision the Western Conference to look like after the year 2020, or after the 2019-2020 NBA campaign, which resulted in the having to face a pandemic 70 games into the season, where the season was shut down, and then they restarted the season by putting together that bubble. But no sooner than that next season, the 2020-21 campaign, you started to see the trend begin to unfold and the landscape begin to evolve. Because you would think after the Lakers won the bubble in 2020 that they would continue to dominate the standings. But by that next season, you had essentially, as a matter of fact, you had the Utah Jazz with a young Donovan Mitchell, 3-time Defense Player of the Year Rudy Gobert, veteran sharpshooter Bojan Bogdanovic, and solid role players that constituted a team that clinched the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Oh, Jordan Clarkson too, won 6th Man of the Year, and they clinched the number 1 seed. Now they didn't go to the finals, but it was a sign of things to come. Number 2 seed were the Phoenix Suns that advanced to the NBA Finals that year. The Denver Nuggets was rolling high after they traded for Aaron Gordon, and they looked like they was ready to punch their ticket to their first finals. And then Jamal Murray suffered the ACL injury, which essentially took him 2 years to recover from. And then Michael Porter Jr., their small forward, started to suffer ailments to his back. But nonetheless, I believe they still clinched the 3 seed. And the Memphis Grizzlies advanced to the playoffs as the A seed and gave Utah Jazz a tough 5-game battle. So you start to see it, the landscape change, and it changed quickly, where young driven teams started to excel and started to dominate the top of the standings. Then it carried over to the next year, where the Golden State Warriors, that had a championship core of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, but they retooled and pursued another championship run by developing young talent, trading for a Andrew Wiggins, who at the time was still only like 26 years old, 25, 26 years old, drafting a Jordan Poole, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. And before you know it, they won their 4th championship during this recent Golden State era of the past 10 years. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies clinched the number 2 seed in 2022. And Minnesota started to break through, and they became a playoff team. Right? Then last year, the Denver Nuggets, prime Denver Nuggets, with a healthy Jamal Murray, healthy Michael Porter, they broke through, and not only did they claim the number 1 spot in the West, but they won their first ever championship in franchise history. So now when you look at the standings, you definitely see the pendulum shifting over to the young driven teams. As they gain more experience, they become more veteran laden, but they're young. Right? So when you look at the standings now, it's clear that that transition is taking place. When the Los Angeles Lakers won the bubble in 2020, basically already after boasting the youngest team in basketball and the deepest and most talented, most versatile young core in the NBA, prior to trading them all away, the Lakers, even during the year of the bubble, fielded the oldest team in the NBA that was not going to hold up. So when they were led to believe that you didn't need young talent, well, they started to struggle during the regular season, and they had to win the play-in tournament just to advance to the playoffs. And then they lost in the first round to the Phoenix Suns in 6 games. And then they decided to go all veteran mode and bringing in one veteran player after another. When I say veteran, I'm talking about guys who had, like, during their 15 years of NBA experience on average. You bring in, well, you trade for Russell Westbrook, who was like 33. You bring in Carmelo Anthony. You bring back Dwight Howard. You bring back Rajon Rondo. You bring in DeAndre Jordan, who had already started to age when he was playing in Brooklyn. You bring in Trevor Ariza, who was part of the Lakers 2009 team, like 13 years prior. You bring in Wayne Ellington. You bring in all these older players, and then the Lakers bottom out and win 33 games and lose 49 games. And not only did they not make the playoffs, but they didn't even make the play-in. So the Lakers, and I'm not trying to just focus on the Lakers, I'm just saying how young talent is the driving impulse of the league. And it should be. It should be. So the Lakers started to try to bring in young players, but they were lesser degree of talent based than they had with the original young core, right? And even then, they're still struggling. So when you look at the standings, 4 years ago, the Oklahoma City Thunder, after Chris Paul, who played one season for the OKC, had arguably the best season of his career, leading that team to the playoffs when nobody even saw it coming or even foresaw something like that happening that year. Where, truth be told, Chris Paul should have been runner-up to league MVP, only behind Giannis Antetokounmpo. He displayed a level of leadership that's rarely seen. But nonetheless, they traded Chris Paul to the Phoenix Suns, and this was like after they start trading away their top stars, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, Victor Oladipo, and they started to acquire in return draft picks after draft pick after draft pick, first round picks. And they were laughed at. They were mocked. They were chided. And then all of a sudden last year, they won 40 games. If I'm not mistaken, they finished the season 40-42, and it was one game from winning the play-in tournament and advancing to the playoffs. And they did that without missing Chet Holmgren, who was the number 2 pick selection of last year's draft. And they missed him for the entire season due to a foot injury. And you plug him into the lineup with the emergence of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, Caleb Williams. They still had Dort was Laffins Dort. And you look at the standings right now, and a team that prior to last season was winning like 20 to 22 games over a 2-3 year stretch. Look at them now. They are sitting atop the Western Conference. They've already they have exceeded last year's victory total, and they still have 19 games to go. Can you imagine this team may clinch number 1 seed in the West? Then the number 2 seed, the Minnesota Timberwolves, a half a game out. And they lost Karl-Anthony Towns due to injury. Now, he's a 10-year veteran, but nonetheless, the team is driven by a young superstar, Anthony Edwards. And they have good young complementary players, Jalen McDaniels or whatnot. They got a great mixture. But nonetheless, they're the number 2 seed after advanced to the playoffs over the past 2 seasons and eliminated in the first round. Then you have the defending champion, Denver Nuggets, that's playing at a perfect pace for themselves. Just trying to stay healthy and then get prepared and get primed for the playoffs. They're half a game out. Then you have the Los Angeles Clippers. They're the 4th seed, 2.5 games out. Then you have the New Orleans Pelicans, who have been dealing with injuries over the past 2 years. Now they're healthy, and they're starting to make their push and starting to reach their potential. They have the 5th seed. The Sacramento Kings, or the 6th seed. Now, this before you get to the play-in bracket with the 7th-seeded Suns, the 8th-seeded Mavericks, Dallas Mavericks, the 7th-seeded Phoenix Suns, the 8th-seeded Dallas Mavericks, the 9th-seeded Los Angeles Lakers, and the 10th-seeded Golden State Warriors, who are 5 games ahead of the 11th seed Houston Rockets. So we're just going to focus on the top 10 teams. So out of the top 10 teams, we're going to say the top 6 seeded teams in the West, there's really only one exclusive veteran-laden team that is operating in win now mode that's in that bracket, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers. The other 2 win now teams, the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Lakers, who most people would probably expect them to be in the top 4 seed, where they're in the play-in bracket. So with the standings reflected, you got a clash between young-driven teams and experienced teams. Now, the bet is, by most pundits, that the experience will win out when you start talking about postseason play. And in some situations, it's possible, but you can't bank on it. So you can't really go by last year. When people say the Los Angeles Lakers advanced to the Western Conference Finals, so therefore their formula is working. But if you really pull back the layers, okay, they had advanced to the play-in as the 7th seed. They played a Minnesota Timberwolves team that was missing Rudy Gobert because for some reason he was suspended that game because he got into a back and forth with a teammate. Not an opponent, but a teammate. And he was suspended for a game. So maybe if he would have played, maybe the outcome is different. Because that game between the Lakers and the Timberwolves basically went down to about the last couple of minutes before the Lakers prevailed and won that game. In the first round, the Lakers matched up against the number 2 seed Memphis Grizzlies. But the problem was the Memphis Grizzlies was missing their starting center, Steven Adams, who has suffered a knee injury that January and really missed the second half of the season. But prior to the injury, he was leading the league in rebounds. And they was missing their backup, Brandon Clark, who ruptured his Achilles that March with a month to go in the regular season. So the center position was totally depleted. They had to start Xavier Tillman, who's really the backup to Jaren Jackson Jr. They had to start him at the 5. And then John Morant was dealing with his situation off the court, and then he suffered a wrist injury. That was not the real Memphis Grizzlies out there. And then if I'm not mistaken, I believe Luke Kennard, who they acquired from the Clippers, I believe he was dealing with an injury. So at full strength, instead of losing in 6 games, maybe Memphis wins in 6 games. Okay. And then the second round, they played a Golden State Warrior team that featured no legitimate center. And Anthony Davis just feasted, and he was really the difference. So what I'm saying is, let's put things in context. There's a clash between, I don't want to say the old and the new, but I'll say the veteran versus the youth. And as the youth start to gain more experience in playoff basketball, they're going to take over. They've already taken over. The defending champion is better than all 3 teams that are operating in win now mode. They're better than the Lakers, they're better than the Clippers, and they're better than Phoenix. And I believe the reason why they're better is because they're more solidified. They have better chemistry. They're not overhauling their roster every year. They're not, switching coaches, every 2 years. Therefore, I believe they have the mental edge over those win-now driven teams. They just have to stay healthy. Now, I know it's hard to repeat. Don't get me wrong. And I believe they have the capability of repeating, but they have to prove it. And what's crazy is the Denver Nuggets actually improved from last year, and they didn't even sign a free agent. And they lost 2 players as part of last year's championship team, and Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. But they're, as of right now, as of today, January 10th, they're sitting there a half a game out of first. They're right there. They're right where they need to be, and they are 8-2 in their last 10 games. So they're starting to rev up. So what I'm trying to say is, eventually, the youth is going to win out. That's what I'm trying to say. We saw an example of that. The Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Phoenix Suns. They are beating them. Now, what I like about the West, well, just the both conferences in general, is that there's a team that always has a matchup, the favorable matchup versus another team. Like a team can match up well versus the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings can match up well versus, let's say, the Los Angeles Lakers. We could say the Denver Nuggets match up well against a team like the Pelicans. You see what I'm getting at? It's like both teams have their strengths. All teams have their strengths, and then all teams have matchups that you can exploit. See, and that's why when they say the conference is weak, I don't think the conference is weak. I just think the conference, you have so many teams, man, that are ascending at the same time. There's going to be a clash, and it's going to be determined in the playoffs. And there's nothing really concrete as to who's going to do what, other than the defending champions, I would say. But even then, they're going to have to prove it on the court. So when you get right down to it, and like I said, I'm not trying to harp on the Los Angeles Lakers because I'm a lifelong fan, a longstanding fan of the franchise. But what I see what Oklahoma City's doing just shows me that if the Lakers had stuck with their young core, that young core driven Laker team, when you look back on it, they darn near went 12 deep. That's unheard of in professional basketball. That's unheard of. And they were all let go. Well, imagine if they would have stayed the course. They'd have been looking like OKC by year 2021. Where you have a whole decade to look forward to instead of pondering, every season what moves you got to make and signing 6 or 7 guys at a time, because the Lakers will have to go through the same process again this offseason. Because they signed a multitude of guys to 1-year deals. And then, if they fall short this season, well, there's going to be pressure for them to, whatever guys they re-sign to an extended contract. Well, they're gonna be looking to have them traded off. It's gonna be the same thing. But like I said, I'm not trying to harp on them because I believe the Phoenix Suns are in the same situation. They after acquiring Kevin Durant, they trade away a lot of their cornerstone players who represented the team in the finals 3 years ago. In DeAndre Ayton, Cameron Johnson, Cameron Payne, Mikal Bridges, who's the new NBA Iron Man. He's never missed an NBA game in his career thus far. And they let them players go. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's fair to those players. Because they help lead you somewhere. And basically, the Phoenix Suns, record-wise, they're really no better than they was before they made all these moves starting last year. And the Clippers, they have a good record, don't get me wrong, and they go into the playoffs. They playoff bound, but they've been at this since 2019. Now I know, a lot of us due to injury to the main guys, Kawhi Leonard or whatnot. But what I'm saying is, man, these organizations that's building up this young talent, they not messing around. And these veteran teams are finding it difficult to stay ahead of them. So what I'm saying, we're seeing a passing of the torch. And Denver broke through last year. And then Oklahoma City is set up so good. If you look at their situation with all the draft picks that they got, nobody's laughing at them no more. What I see, they're not going to fall off for the next 10 years. And they so far ahead of schedule, nobody would ever imagine them sitting atop the conference as of 2024. But sometimes when you do things the right way, you exceed expectations. You see what I'm saying? Ahead of schedule. And a lot of these win-out teams are behind or behind the A ball, trying to catch up. And they're banking on experience winning out in the end. But can you really bank on it when you look at these standings? That's what I'm trying to say. And if the Clippers slip, the Pelicans could catch them. And now you're looking at a situation where your top 4 seeded teams are all either a prime team that built up their young talent, and the rest of them are young driven teams. We could be looking at that. And then you got the Sacramento Kings right there. And then the San Antonio Spurs with a young Victor Wembanyama, you know they're going to improve as the years unfold. Houston Rockets have improved from last year. You know what I'm saying? So it's a situation where when these win-out driven teams fall off, they could be looking at a precarious situation for a very long time. Well, I'm saying sometimes, no, it is good to be patient instead of throwing all your chips in the middle of the table. Now, in today's environment, a lot of voices will say, well, this is what you have to do to win because there is no tomorrow. But you can't think like that because there's still no guarantee. You can throw all the chips in the middle of the table. There is still no guarantee that you're going to win. If you look at all the teams in NBA history or just in sports in general that have had long-standing runs, that produced multiple championships, that even proved to be dynasties, they always started from the bottom and worked their way up. There was no shortcuts in the process. And it seems like the teams that are led to go that route and forego and exempt that true period of building, they wind up selling themselves short in the end. So kudos to all them teams. I applaud all those teams that stayed the course because I know for a fact if the Lakers had done that, they'd have been sitting atop the conference already. And on a yearly basis, you can bank on them being outside of major injuries, no worse than a top 3 seed every year. And you still got your draft picks. You can still replenish that young talent, bring in more young players to solidify what you're doing, to never really fall off, to where you don't have to rely on player empowerment impulse that requires you give up everything for a win-out scenario. It's played out. The formula don't work. And it never really worked, especially in this Western Conference. You see? And over in the East, the Boston Celtics are prime. They've been building around their top 2 players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And they far and away have the best record in the league. They will have home court this playoff. They just have to prove it and try to claim a championship. Now, Milwaukee's already done it. They just trying to do it again. But like I said, kudos to the Orlando Magic, the Knicks, who have been struggling for years, and now they're a perennial playoff level team. Indiana, for the most part, always feels a competitive team. It's time, man. That formula is played out. The super team era is played out. And what I like about these young teams, particularly in the Western Conference, all of them got at least two guys, man, who can go off and give you 25, 30 in a big game that can match, the stars that the Clippers, the Phoenix Suns, and the Lakers have. See, I'm not, like I said, the Lakers are my squad, but the Phoenix Suns, I disagree with what they've done. Because, Kevin Durant, all-time great player, man, one of the greatest scorers of all time, man. But at the end of the day, he's 36 years old. They've given up a lot, and they're a play-in team as we speak. And they have a difficult schedule coming up, so they could, and Devin Booker has been hurt, I think, due to a sprained ankle. He'll probably return back this week at some point. But at the end of the day, and then the Golden State Warriors, they've had, now their run is natural. They never did sacrifice their future. They had a tremendous run. Four championships over 8-year span, and they've been going at this for 10 years. And you can't do nothing but respect what Golden State has done. 4 championships. I mean, you really can't ask for nothing more than that, man. Everything else is gravy. So their current status as a team is just a natural course of being after producing a run that has lasted for a long time. So you figure that this will probably be their last go at it, it's currently constituted with their core players of their championship success. But as far as Oklahoma City Thunder, I would say this is going to be customary for them. Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, Pelicans, Kings. That's 5 teams that's going to be staple. They're going to be leaders of the pack. And there's always someone, and then you got the Dallas Mavericks with Luka, Kyrie, rookie Derek Lively. They brought in Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards. So Luka is always going to make sure they're going to be playoff level if he's healthy. You know what I'm saying? So it's not going to get easy. It's only going to get tougher. And the teams that have assets that can make moves to incrementally improve their team, their roster, it's going to make them stronger, man. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. But I just wanted to deliver that, and kudos. I just want to say kudos to those teams. But this is how the West is won, and this is how the West is going to be won. So the Lakers, Clippers, Suns, this is probably it right here. I would say this after this year, then if they don't get it done, man, that's going to be it. It's going to be it. But this would be a great lesson for teams in the future. Do not use your young talent as pawns in the game to try to shortcut the process to winning and flip over and bring in superstars. That type of thinking is outdated, and for all practical purposes, it's like a, how can I say this? It really, in the grand scheme of things, that type of thinking is detrimental to a franchise, because you're not going to have a run as long as you think you're going to have it, and you're not going to win as much as you think that you will. As Michael Jordan, the great Michael Jordan, has said many a times, you cannot shortcut the process to true greatness. And if these organizations stick to that mindset and continue to build, they will thrive and excel. Because the first thing you really want to do in this current landscape is build an organization up to where they're going to be competitive in playoff level every year over like a 5-7 year period. And then once you reach that point, then you try to pursue their final move that's going to put you in position to take you over the top. But the first goal is to build a foundation to where you would be competitive and successful, to where fans would be satisfied with the product that's out there on the court. That's what you want. And then from there, let the chips fall where they may. So I just want to drop that nugget. Until next time, this is JB for BTB Behind the Bench.